As we are now just one day away from Blue Jays baseball finally returning in spring training, there are a lot of question marks heading in to the first game of the rest of spring training, from Vladdy not extending to some prospects who are looking to shine. And we have someone who is on site in Dunedin in Keegan Matheson joining us today. Keegan, first of all, thank you very much for joining. I use your tweets all the time in the videos. Huge fan. Thank you. And I'm excited to talk some Blue Jays baseball today because it's a very, I would say, interesting spring training over the past few years here.
It has been. It's gotten a little more interesting, a little messier these last few days. You never know what camp's going to be. The Blue Jays have had a couple of honestly like boring spring
Yep.
trainings the last couple of years, which is a good thing. Like you want a boring spring. This one has not been. So it's been interesting. Vladdy watches on. The direction of this franchise the next few years is up in the air, and everyone seems really happy about it. I think fan sentiment's at an all-time high. People are thrilled. People are buying tickets. Man, oh man, life is good.
I think everyone here watching right now thinks the Jays are going to finish first in the AL East here. They're all super excited. But jokes aside, it's going to be interesting. I want to start with a couple things here because obviously you're on site in Dunedin, which I'm sure you're enjoying the weather there as well because it's very cold other parts. And I want to start with Vladdy a little bit here because Ken Rosenthal came out today, so the Jays had every chance to do it this earlier. I just wanted to use that as a point of reference here. How do you feel personally about the way that, I guess, negotiations went down both over the past few years? This year, we're having a bunch of crazy things. That is the big conversation, and it's not going to stop in spring training. It's going to continue all year long. And you're saying the sentiment around camp is pretty, cheerful, which is, they're trying to win games. But from the fan base's side, and obviously I'm a Jays fan here, it's looking pretty bleak right now.
Yeah, nobody's happy, nor should they be. Honestly, it's the emotion part of this matters. The fandom matters because fans matter.
Yep.
Because if they don't buy tickets, none of this exists. If they don't read my stories, I don't have a job. I'm digging ditches somewhere. We get very much caught up in valuations and the numbers measured side of baseball. And that's fine. But there needs to be a little room for the human heart in all of this as well. And fans, the people who give a damn about this team and support it, this is about as upset as I have seen them, outside of, the morning after a postseason loss type of deal. This has been a mess.
Yeah.
Completely a mess. And the Blue Jays did not just, screw up this week. It's been a longer thing than that. Go back to when Vladdy was in his second, third year, around when Tatis Jr. extended. There's always been a number. There would have been a number to extend Vladdy when he was 18, I'm sure. It would have been weird, but
Yep.
there's always a number. No matter what, there's always a number. And that has been a moving target. And it's been moving and moving and moving. And the Blue Jays have been chasing it, and they haven't caught it. I know that all the attention is on the recent deadline, and rightfully so. But there have been 10 different times this could have happened over the years. And the number has kept running away from the Blue Jays. And that's tough because players are making more and more money. It's only going to keep happening. This kind of happened in the NBA over the last decade where more TV money just jacked up salaries. I don't know if that's going to happen in hockey. It seems like everybody makes the same money to me. But in baseball, we're seeing it jack up. And as every Soto and Ohtani contract happens, I know that Vladdy's neither of those players, but they bring up everything else. So the Blue Jays have been forced to chase that number. And Vladdy, I think, clearly has the power here. He's in total control. If this was an election, front office versus Vladdy, we know who's winning. And it's not close at this point. Now, we don't know the numbers, which makes it a hard conversation, but the optics of it matter. And what people care about matters because, yeah, your hardcore fans might look at this and say, oh, okay, well, this number, this contract, this valuation. 98% of Blue Jays fans just love Vladdy.
Yep.
They want to watch the game, and they want to have a Blue Jays star who stays their whole career, which is really rare and looks like that might not happen. It's getting dangerous.
Yeah, and even as like the casual fan, and obviously comment section, just fans in general, Twitter, whatever it is, this is probably the most mad that I've seen a collective fan base surrounding one, even more mad than the Mariners, playoff series, all these different things.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it's a culmination of what you mentioned. years and years of opportunity to extend. Now, I will also bring up the counterpoint to people who do say that. You can look at some of his stats here. Now, this is obviously his baseball savant page, and it doesn't go all the way back, but 20 people are arguing. I want to hear your thoughts on this because people tend to have different opinions. He's coming off of a year prior to last year where he had a 789 OPS, and we all watch Vladdy every day. The year before, 819, which was still okay, but was a far cry from his 2021. I call it an MVP season because Shohei Ohtani, he obviously, got first. But either way, I don't know when exactly the Jays would have been best positioned to extend Vladdy. I would assume even after 2021, after a better season in 2021 than he had last year, because of the market, he would have got extended for a lot cheaper than he is asking now. We're hearing rumblings, rumors of $550+ million that he wanted. When do you think the Jays, and again, you're around the team a lot, when do you think they should have went for it in the sense of an extension? Because it's very difficult. We know Ross Atkins in this front office loves weighing their pros and cons. I'm sure they have a table in their office with numbers saying this is the number we want to go for. But it becomes very interesting now when he's had a lot of up and down years, and he's a first baseman that doesn't provide much defensive value at all. So it makes it a lot harder than a guy like Tatis, who at the very least can be a decent defender now in the outfield. But it is what it is. It's very confusing to me about when the best, or it's hard to predict the best time that you could have extended him. And that's a big question.
Yeah, hold him up against Bichette even. Like, go back 1 year from right now. A year ago, I would have said, okay, is Vladdy, is he just a really good hitter or is he a great player? A year ago, legitimate question. Also a year ago, Bichette was the most predictable, consistent player in this organization who would always hit 300, always OPS 810 or something like that. You could set your watch to it. So much changed in just a year. So it's easy to look back and say, you know what, right before 2021, the Blue Jays should have extended Vladdy. And I know that if someone in the Blue Jays front office heard me say that, they would roll their eyes and tell me to shut up because it's easy to play smart in hindsight. But for any player of Vladdy's caliber, and we've seen it around the league with so many young players, if you go around the league and look at most organizations' biggest contract right now, a lot of them are for current players who were extended early in their control. It's what teams are doing. And that's why I've always considered, or I always did consider, the dangerous point for Vladdy right around starting last year. Once you let a guy get into his last couple of years, that's when free agency, you start to smell it. And I cannot overstate how attractive free agency is for a player. I don't think we talk about that enough. I don't care if it's my job or if you are a teacher or a nurse or a welder. Imagine next time you talk to your boss about your salary, instead of talking to them, there's 30 other people at the table who want to sign you too. Somebody there is going to have the high number and your life's going to be a heck of a lot better. And for Vladdy at this age, even as a first baseman at this age, in this market, with where numbers are at right now, it's a dream. Like, that is as good as anyone's had it in a long time in Major League Baseball. And that's why he can, if he wants to, come in with a high number. Because if the Jays don't want to match it, whatever. He will be the most exciting name in free agency next offseason. And you're already going to see it. I mean, there's already 10,000 stories and tweets linking Vladdy to the Red Sox and Mets because for some reason we need to do that stupid thing. It's going to start and it's only going to pick up. It's going to be terrible.
Yep, we're seeing him liking Instagram posts today from the New York Yankees, which is interesting. And it's a good point you bring up. And I think it was Joe Siddle brought it up, and it's something I brought up as well. I don't think that Vladimir Guerrero Jr., there was any world where he was going to sign an extension with the Jays over the past week, unless that number was something that he thinks is going to be better than what he's, of course, going to get in free agency, because it makes the most sense for him and his agency. And I think that number is 550, like something that he knew the Jays wouldn't bite on because of how ridiculous it is. But now, as he's going to enter free agency, you mentioned it. I mean, the prices are going up. Let's think about Juan Soto. He got a contract more than Shohei Ohtani's, and Shohei Ohtani is arguably the best player of all time already, and he has the trajectory to do that. With numbers going up, this is a gold mine for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but the pressure's still on the front office to get it done. And now as it enters, of course, the end of this season, this is going to be, I think, there's a chance this is a better season than last year for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. when it comes to his actual production. Players perform better in contract years, and I want to pivot a little bit now to that regarding spring training and the upcoming season, because I think it was Shai Davidi. Someone came out and basically said, this is a great opportunity now for the Jays to actually win some ball games, which is what they failed to do last year very much. You have Vladdy in a contract year. You have Bo Bichette. You have Chris Bassett. And, well, Max Scherzer, he's not, whether he retires or not afterwards. There's a lot of players that this is it for them until they get their next paycheck. In theory, that should kind of give the Jays some, hopefully, some positive outcomes when it comes to, actually getting wins.
Ideally, can't get much worse from here, frankly.
Yeah, no.
And I don't mean that as a shot. I really mean it. Like, in considering where fan sentiment is right now, coming off of how last year went, it's got to go up from here. And the tough part of this is that even if the Blue Jays get off to a 20-10 start, part of that conversation is still Vladdy. It's, oh my God, this is a great start for the team. They're going to make a playoff run. But Vladdy,
Yep,
going to be attached to absolutely everything. I think Bo is going to have a huge bounce back year. I would bet heavy on Bo. Like I'm a big believer in him. I'm around him all the time. I see how he handles this. Last year was hard on him, but I think he's going to have a great year this year. And what I'm interested to see is what happens if the Blue Jays are kind of stuck in the middle. Now, if they suck, all right, people get traded. They try to reset this franchise. If they're good, then, like you mentioned, that's motivation to really go for it this year. If they're good at the trade deadline, you trade every prospect you have.
Yeah.
I don't care. This is the chance. You go all the way in. But if they're stuck in the middle, I'm talking hanging on to the third wild card, 2 games out of the third wild card. What the hell do you do then? And that's an uncomfortable place for them to be, because that would be a place where the front office would have to look at it and think, you know what, the right move is to pull back. But how can you do that when there's people trying to save their jobs, trying to win one last time? And I think this Vladdy situation just doubles, triples, quadruples the stakes of everything. Absolutely every decision, every game, every bounce this year. It's because it's attached to everything. This is the Vladdy era, and it might be ending. So everything's attached to it.
Yeah, I actually said almost what you said. A couple, the video I made surrounding when Vladdy wasn't signed. This is going to, every time a home run is hit for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., it's going to be Jays fans excited, immediately followed by, this is going to cost the Jays more money if they go for him, immediately followed by, this could be the last time we ever see Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in a Blue Jays uniform.
Go cross home plate, give the Johnny Manziel up to the Bronx.
And it's not just him. It's Bo Bichette, who, I'll ask you a question in a minute because he looks absolutely jacked. Is he as jacked looking in the pictures as he is in real life, and he just looks completely in shape and ready to go?
Yeah, he actually does. A lot of spring training is just like,
they say that. Yeah.
I've seen it so many times where, like, I will take a picture of a guy that's just at like a good angle for him, and he looks like his shoulders and arms are bigger, and it becomes a narrative all spring long. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it's just my picture. But
I've made a video on that before, so I'll take some blame on that. I'm sure I've made a video on one of the angles.
Bo looks great.
Yeah,
like he looks like himself. He looks healthy, and Bo is already the most motivated player I've been around, I think. And sometimes that can bite you. You know, John Schneider always says Bo is his biggest critic, and that is very true. But I think Bo's in a good place with this right now. And when he gets rolling, like, Bo Bichette changes everything for this team. And I almost hate saying it because it sounds like you're saying, you know, the injured guy coming back at the deadline is a trade addition. Like, that's how it feels to say, like, oh, this lineup's big additions, actually Bo Bichette. Like, no, let's not think too much like that. But God, like, if he gets back to hitting 300, OPSing 800, 25 homers, he can steal the odd base. That's pretty special. And if he does that, teams around the league can forget last year. It'll get a little bit easier to say, okay, he's 5 out of his 6 years been pretty good. And that's when he gets that kind of Willy Adames type of money or whatever it'll end up being. So, it sounds like a really fun December ahead for Blue Jays fans. You know, just a really wonderful free agency.
I'm going to say that this is probably going to be the most stressful season for a lot of Jays fans out there.
Yeah.
Now, I also think it has the opportunity. I've been saying this, some people disagree. One of the most exciting Jays seasons when it comes to actual decisions being made, because it's also Mark Shapiro, Ross Atkins, their jobs are on the line here now. I'd even argue John Schneider to a degree, though I do think some of the hate towards him was overblown a little bit, as I'm showing a tweet from you today where, Jeff Hoffman, new addition as well here, striking out Vladdy if you need something to feel conflicted about. It's very interesting. And you mentioned the trade deadline. That's going to be a ridiculous one. And there is a good chance they're in the middle. They were at the bottom. Their decision was easy last year. You trade all the players, and I think Ross did a great job there. I'll give him credit where it's due. However, if it comes this season, you mentioned, let's say they're hanging on to the wild card spot, the third one, by a game. I think just based on the fact that you have two expiring free agents and you can Mark Shapiro, Ross Atkins, although I think Shapiro's going to stay because the renovations, all those things, but at least Ross Atkins' job on the line for sure. They're going to push to go all in, even if they're on the borderline outside looking in. You know, this team probably isn't good enough to make a World Series push here. And their prospect pool, which we'll get into in a little bit here, it's deeper than it was a year ago. And there's some things to be excited about. But man, oh man, that decision in itself is going to, each win matters, I think. Everybody's going to be sweating every single win, at least internally with Ross Atkins and everything like that. And extending Bo Bichette's a conversation that no one's really having. There's a case to be made that if you're the front office, you'd almost, this is going to sound crazy, I'm sure some front offices would rather Bo Bichette in a long-term deal than Vladimir Guerrero Jr., given the volatility that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has had. And that's been starting to circulate a little bit today. Any quick thoughts on that one? Because when you look at their wars since they came into the year, very, very similar. And Bo, in theory, has defensive value, even though he was a bad defender to start his career, has gotten better. And Vladdy on their hands at first base. Like, no one's talking about Bo Bichette. People just assume he's gone, which I also think he's probably gone. But there's like this, he's almost as valuable as Vladdy on like when you average it all out over the past few seasons.
Yeah, the number matters. Do you want Vladdy for what, 40 million? Or do you want Bo for 22 or 26 or wherever he ends up? Bo's number can change a lot based on this year, but he's going to be going into this market young and as a shortstop. I mean, that's where you want to be. It's a dream spot also for Bo Bichette. And when I spoke to him last week, and it's been out there, he said that they have not approached him about anything so far. And frankly, I don't know what number they'd approach him with, really, at this point. I don't know where that sweet spot is right now, and it's pretty hard to find. But Bo Bichette is capable of being like an elite tier free agent this next year, of being not at Vladdy's level, not at Kyle Tucker's level, but of being one of those next top guys, like the range Willy Adames was in this year, where he is a team's headline free agent. And it's strange to think of them like breaking up, Vlad and Bo. And even, that's what even made it strange when Cavan Biggio left the organization. I mean, he was a utility guy who was struggling, but he's still representative of this era of Blue Jays baseball. And that's why I think it has been tough for a lot of people, because a lot of Blue Jays fans got back into this team in those 15 and 16 runs. Those teams were, descended, pulled back. They didn't blow up those teams, but guys got old.
Yep.
Those teams went away because they were supposed to. They were built on veterans who were 32 and 36 years old. Those teams don't last forever. We get it. But this team right here, when you are losing stars and a potential star in Bo in their mid-20s, like that sticks with you because it doesn't go away. If, I don't want to feed the extremely American media machine of where is Vladdy going to go next, but if Vladdy strolls in wearing a Mets or a Red Sox jersey and hits a home run, that's like the worst moment in Rogers Center history. I mean, that's a complete disaster. So with both Vladdy and Bo, there's a lot on the line, man. There's more than just baseball games on the line here.
Yeah, and before we pivot, I want to ask you your prediction on what you think happens with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette at the, you can say end of the year. Let's assume they don't get traded at the deadline. Do you think they remain a J, or one of them, or neither of them? You don't have to guess what team or whatever. I just want to think what your guess is. My prediction is Vladdy probably stays, Bo leaves, but it's starting to kind of sway the other way with each day. So I'm curious to see what your guess is. It is a guess. I'll preface that.
All along, I've been more on the Vladdy side of him being likelier staying. But I would still lean to the side of both leaving, not because I have inside info on them, but because that's just how it goes. When you get to free agency, Vladdy likes Toronto. Vladdy likes the Blue Jays.
He likes money the most, I think.
Exactly. No matter what you hear, nothing else is going to matter more than the money. Now, what the Blue Jays have with Vladdy right now is a tiebreaker. They rarely have that. Sometimes when, coming to Canada or the border is an issue for players, the Blue Jays lose the tiebreaker. They need to put in more money. They need to go an extra year. This is the rare chance where the Blue Jays, they have a tiebreaker with Vladdy. If they have a contract up against the Mets, the Red Sox, the Pirates, I don't care who, they've got that tiebreaker with Vladdy. But they're going to be up against a ton of teams. Now, not everyone will be serious. By the end of that, I'm sure there will be 4 or 5 really serious teams bidding at his number. But still, you're one of 5, you're one of 7, you're one of 9 teams. Like, this is what the Blue Jays have opened themselves up to. Because right now, it's only them and Vladdy who can talk. It's one-on-one. It either gets done or it doesn't. In free agency, you're opening up so many variables, and it can go so many different ways, which is why really any free agent that hits the market, it's part of my job to remove the emotion from that. And Vladdy's saying all the right things. I really respect how he's handling this, and I think he's handling it well. But when free agency comes, once a team offers him another 3 years and an extra $100 million in the Jays, I don't care where you like. You can like any city if you are well paid in that city. It's easy.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think a lot of Jays fans just got a little bit sadder now that that's your guess. I do think, I agree with you. It's going to be it's going to be a saddening time if that does happen in free agency. What you're telling me is the Jays are going to be finalists again, and they're going to miss out on another free agent. I think that's what I guess technically
I'll dust
it'd be
off
worse.
One of those stories. I'm getting good at those stories over the years.
We're all pretty familiar with them. Roki Sasaki, all that. It must be interesting to cover it. Let's shift a little bit to some prospects, because obviously the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. stuff, that's going to be here all year long. You've been covering, obviously, spring training, prospects in general. And you said today, and you, of course, you tweeted today, John Schneider said it about Aurelvis Martinez. And I'm curious to see what your thoughts are. It doesn't have to be about Aurelvis. It can be about any of the prospects, because I've been talking about him over the past few days, trying to get the energy back in in some Jays fans' shoes, and myself included, because it's been a horribly disheartening past 2 years when it comes to off seasons. At least I got Anthony Santander, which I'll touch on a little bit later. So these are the top 15 prospects, and you can throw somebody out outside of this. From what you're seeing at spring training, from what you've seen over the past couple of years, whatever it ends up being, is there a guy or two that you think is going to surprise Jays fans when it comes to actually either breaking the team out of camp or just positioning themselves to be somebody? Alan Roden is someone Ross Atkins came out and directly praised, which is something that you rarely ever see. So it can be Alan Roden if you want. Someone that you expect to make an impact on the Jays over the next couple of years, or you could even say fighting for a spot this year at spring training that could break the team.
Yeah, I'm even reading down this list right now. This is how fried my brain is in spring training. These are my own rankings, and I don't even know them well at this point. But our pipeline rankings, they're going to update in
2024.
early March. Early March, we'll get them updated, and there'll be a lot of additions. Nothing too crazy. But as I look down this list, you want to find the next Vladdy and the next Bo.
Yep.
Yes, a guy like Arjun Namala is incredibly talented and very exciting, like legitimately exciting. But that's a few years down the road. And a few years down the road, God, it doesn't interest me really at this point. Alan Roden is someone this entire organization loves, absolutely loves, because if you could create a Blue Jays prospect, it's Alan Roden. He has that kind of Spencer Horwitz, Will Wagner, like on-base ability, the contact ability. He's an incredibly bright, engaging guy, extremely well-liked, and could be a potential leadoff guy down the road. He fits a million things the Blue Jays need. Now, it's not going to happen right out of camp, I don't think, but he fits a lot of what they need. Further down the road, they need to develop some pitching, because looking at Chris Bassett now, Kevin Gausman next year, Berríos can opt out next year, Scherzer will be gone. Yeah, Tiedemann and Manoah are coming back, but if one of them sticks and is an MLB starter, that's success.
Yep.
This organization needs to start developing some pitching. They've done very well to go out and buy it on the open market, but developing it's going to be important. So getting Trey Savage in, being part of that's going to be huge. But on the position player side this year, I really think the attention is on Alan Roden from the organization. Yeah, you're going to have Aurelvis Martinez, Addison Barger, but Aurelvis Martinez needs to learn to play defense good enough that he can be on the field. His defense isn't good right now. It's a work in progress, and he is working on it. Credit to him. But unless you are going to OPS 1,000, you have to be able to play functional defense.
Yep.
Addison Barge is another example, a perfect prospect example. When you look at him and his measurements, I'm talking about like exit velocity measurements, not bicep size, but both are impressive. Everything on a piece of paper is eye-popping, incredible. His throwing arm is stupid.
Yep.
It's so good, but he's got to put it together at the major league level, and we haven't seen that. So how much time do the Blue Jays have to hope on that? I think both cases, really Martinez and Barger, could be a situation of, okay, go to AAA, whoever hits gets to come up to the big leagues. You know, they need some upside offensively. Rodon's not a guy who's going to be, OPSing 900 and lighting the league on fire, but as an all-around player, he's fascinating. And this organization has not developed an everyday outfielder in a million years. So they're due, I guess.
Yeah. Speaking of that, good transition. Regarding the outfield to start the season, Dalton Varsho, he's probably going to miss opening day. He's obviously dealing with recovering from a surgery. What are the Jays thinking regarding opening day? Because we're at the point now where I can start thinking about opening day. It's about a month away. I've been center field, Miles Straw. I try to refuse bringing up that name on this channel, but we're going to for the sake of this. Joey Loperfido, are you thinking Joey Loperfido starting center field opening day with, obviously George Springer? Do you think that's the kind of the starting center fielder Joey Loperfido with Springer and right? Do you think that's the opening day? And of course, Santander in left field, the new addition. Is that kind of the vibe that you're getting out of camp? Because I don't really know who else would slide in there to at least start opening day and for the first little bit until Varsho returns.
Yeah, probably right now. And you can list them through Loperfido, Clase, Lucas, Straw. And I think they need some consistency off the top. I don't think the Blue Jays should get too much into, playing 5 different center fielders a week and overthinking this.
Yep.
They have overthought enough. Just whoever they choose, and right now I think it would be Joey Loperfido. Let him run with it. Let him have those first 3-4 weeks or whatever it is while Dalton Varsho comes back. Maybe Varsho is ahead of schedule and saves everyone from this conversation. Or maybe he needs 6 weeks. We just don't know yet. Shoulders are really tricky when you're throwing. But that's going to be a key one for the Blue Jays because Varsho is so valuable to them. And Loperfido didn't hit much last year. The talent is absolutely there. He is one of the reasons I loved that Kikuchi trade. It was fantastic. But again, like Barger, like Martina, like any young guy, you've got to see it at the major league level. And the Jays do not have a lot of time to be patient this year. There's got to be some. The word urgency kills me because I feel like every year teams say this is right now urgency, but my God, if ever, it's this year.
Yeah, Manuel Clase, that's a good one as well. Obviously, very speedy prospect, maybe a leadoff guy in the future. Surrounding a couple other things here. So obviously Anthony Santander was the big new addition and just free agency in general. Do you think the Jays did enough from an offensive standpoint? Because as you look through the lineup and you compare them to other AL East teams, and the Red Sox made a ton of additions, and the Jays in their own right made a lot of additions. Obviously, Andres Gimenez, Nick Sandlin, someone who's not talked about a lot, helps the bullpen. You obviously have a bunch of other guys, Anthony Santander, Jeff Hoffman. They made additions. Jimmy Garcia, the first one of the offseason that hasn't really been spoken about either. That's a big addition as well. But from the offensive side of things, Andres Gimenez, Anthony Santander addresses one of their issues, which is power, and then I guess doubles down on one of their strengths, which is defense, and they're hoping he converts back to a league average hitter, which will then get his WAR up to a 5 to a 6 as opposed to a 3 to a 4. That's kind of their hoping. And maybe replaces Bo Bichette in the future if he leaves at shortstop. Do you think they did enough offensively? Because there was a ton of rumors about Pete Alonso. I was thrown on the train that we had Pete Alonso there for a little bit. That obviously didn't come to fruition. It feels like they're one bat away from really being the scary lineup that, Jeff Passan tweeted about in 2021 that brings Jays fans poor memories about Teoscar Hernandez, all these different things. I feel like they're one bat away from being not on that level, but competitive enough offensively. Do you think that's the case, or do you think there's enough bounce back and enough room here for people to, bounce back and for the offense to be what we need it to be in order to, win the AL East or at least get into a wild card spot?
No, they're one away, for sure. And which the optimist looks at that as your one away. The pessimist, which is usually where I lean a bit more, means that you might be a bad break away from being two away at this point. And the Jays right now are left hoping that Martinez, Jimenez, Barger, Schneider, that somebody really pops this year. That somebody really jumps up and hits 25 homers and chips in some real offense. Um, they're still at a point where I think they had a good offseason.
What would you grade it? I was going to
All
ask
the
you this
way
later.
good.
What would you give it a
Yeah.
letter? Letter on the offseason. What would you give it?
The offseason itself, B.
Okay.
Now, I know that the reply to that is they didn't get Vladdy, it's an F. Yeah, I'm aware.
I
But
also gave it a B. Same as
the
me.
offseason itself, B, it's good. Nothing is going to matter much without Vladdy, I don't think. But in a bubble, the offseason, it was good. Took them a while to get going, of course. Looked like a lower grade for a while. But right now, they're still hoping for a bat to jump up. And for a while, yeah, it looked like, would it be Pete Alonso? Would it
Bregman.
be another one of these free agents? Unfortunately, all of the idiots pretending to be reporters on Twitter were wrong, shockingly. But RIP to those accounts. But
They're gone. They're gone.
yeah, shocking. But right now, I still feel like they're that one away. And this is the type of thing that when you talk to people in front offices, and I haven't had this conversation, but this is the type of conversation that if you speak to someone in an MLB front office, they'll tell you it's a long season. And if they get to June, July, maybe that's what they hit the trade market and go after. But for now, they need somebody to take a bit of a jump. And then they need Vladdy to be good again, Bo to be good, Santander to be good, nobody to get hurt, all of that stuff. But still a bat away. Still one bat away.
Okay. Yeah, that's exactly where I am as well. I was sold on the Pete Alonso front. He always wanted to be a Met. Alex Bregman, not so much. And third baseman wise, quickly, you think it's Ernie Clement? You think he's the guy who starts opening day? I mean, I've been thinking about players. Like, there's a couple of other options. Relvis, I don't think he's good enough defensively. Clement put up a very solid season last year, a 3-point something, B-WAR, depending on if you use Fangraphs or Baseball Reference. Got to be Clement, right? Which is not exciting to me because I think he's going to kind of regress back to an average utility player. Nothing against Ernie Clement, great person, but that's my biggest worry here is third base. If you would have added a really good third baseman, one of the best infields in baseball.
Oh, totally. I think it's Ernie off the top. The organization really likes Ernie.
Yep.
But when you're looking for a place to upgrade the offense, third base.
Yep.
And that's got to still be an opportunity. Martinez can play there. Barger can play there. Wagner can play there. I think this has got to be a real hot hand situation. And that could very well be Clement. We'll see. They like his defense there a ton, as they should. But I think Ernie Clement, and I mean this in a complimentary way because it's important. Like, I think he is a perfect super utility guy, not just because he can play multiple positions, but because he can come off the bench and put together a good at bat. I don't care how long he's been on that bench. His contact profile, his athleticism, like he's an incredible athlete.
Yep.
He is, of anyone on the team, he is good at the most sports. Like, he's the guy who would beat you in basketball and in hockey and in table tennis. Like, he's that guy on this roster. I think he can step in and be valuable in so many different places. So if the Blue Jays need to move him into more of that role, that's not a demotion. That's not a worse thing. Like, he can be really important there. But I just don't know who runs with that job. It's got to be a hot hand thing. And again, I wouldn't want to see this turn into a chasing matchups thing. Oh, this guy's starting today because the pitcher has a high spin slider, blah, blah, blah. Like, cool. But eventually you've got to have some consistency and let a guy run with it.
Yep. And Ross Atkins, they're going to be using their exactly what you just said you didn't want to see. That is coming. And now that they have second base kind of locked in, there's going to be a lot of hot-handing third base as well. I mean, David Schneider, Will Wagner, obviously there's so many guys that it's going to be interesting. All right, one final thing before we wrap up, and shout out to you. You had the scoop on this today. You have the pitching plans going forward for this upcoming weekend into what's going to be a very, I guess, interesting spring training handful of games here. So a couple things. One, what's the sentiment? I mean, Easton Lucas, headlining the opening day is shout out to Easton Lucas. We'll give him his props there. What is it looking like surrounding players actually, regulars playing? When we'll kind of see Vladdy in games? Based off previous years, it's kind of in and out, pretty random. Sunday should be fun. You get Yariel and Jake Bloss, which is interesting because Yariel Rodriguez is now going to be, in theory, moved to a long bullpen role. Maybe they'll run 6-man rotations sometimes to help mitigate Max Scherzer's amount of starts. But either way, are we going to start seeing regulars around Sunday, Monday? Are they going to try to keep them to the games that are televised in Dunedin like they did last year? What is the feeling around? Because obviously Saturday's the big opening game, spring training thing, even though it's Easton Lucas headlining it, and then José Berríos on the game Tuesday. What's the sentiment regarding that?
Yeah, you typically see a good batch of regulars right off the top. Wouldn't surprise me to see Vladdy and those types of guys just for an at bat or two, especially home games. Now, Sunday is at Red Sox, which is, I'm not going. I'm going to stay back in camp. John Schneider, he said when he announced that today, he said, I hope you're all coming down. And afterwards, I thought, I don't care who's pitching. I'm not going to drive 3 hours south and then north again in traffic. When the reason being, not just being lazy, I promise, but on those trips, they don't send many big leaguers. That's kind of something that you earn, once you have a few years in the league. You don't have to go on those big bus trips anymore. So Sunday game, you'll see a couple of regulars in the lineup. Teams always send a few. That's an understanding. But not a superstar lineup on the road early on in camp, I don't think. But early games in Dunedin, and especially think of games at Phillies and at Yankees. Those are nearby. Those are just a 20-minute drive. Those are likelier for veterans to be in. But once you're Vladdy, and especially once you're George Springer or Anthony Santander, part of being a veteran big leaguer is not having to sit on a bus on a Florida highway for half the day. So those road games might not be as exciting. But you know what? After the winter, it's all good.
Yeah, baseball's back. That's at least the good thing. Any final thoughts before we wrap up here? It was great, and I know you're obviously covering the team every day. Hopefully, it all continues to be fun there. Any final tidbits you want to throw out there to any sad Jays fans or happy Jays fans that baseball's back out there? Anything you're looking forward to the most in this upcoming season before we wrap up and I shout out your great book that's coming out very soon?
Hey, it'll be an interesting season if nothing else. A strange part of my job. Like a lot of my friends do not understand my job, which is because my best buddies and I, we don't talk about sports, which is one reason I love them. And a lot of the time, them or my girlfriend or someone will say, "Oh God, they lost again. I'm sorry," and I say, "I don't." My job is to not care, but what I do care about is interesting stories and an interesting team to cover. This year is going to be that. It is going to be one hell of a story. Right now, it looks like a story most people won't enjoy, but you never know. I always look back on every season, and I always say you never know where a season's going to take you. You have no idea. It's kind of like a bar game over drinks that me and the writers often play, where we'll pull up the 2019 Jays or the 2018, and we'll start riffing off guys who made 3 appearances, and none of us even remember it, right? You never know what you're going to see. It's going to be interesting, and the stakes are incredibly high, which means that if it crashes, it's going to be worse than ever, but you never know. Every once in a while, something goes right. I know it doesn't feel like that right now, but even me, the pessimist of pessimists, I'm open to the idea that this season surprises a lot of people.
Yep, and you'll be covering the storylines all season long. All your links will be in the description. But one quick shout out to your book. Any words you want to have on that? It's coming out June 3rd. It's called The Franchise Toronto Blue Jays. There's some stuff from John Gibbons for a bunch of different things. Anything you want to kind of throw out there surrounding that book, there'll be links in the description to pre-order it. There'll be links to all your stuff there as well. But any quick words about your book? I'm going to be getting it. I'm going to shoot this out here, just promoting it for you. There'll be some Ohtani stuff in there that you're going to want to read there if you're or maybe you won't if you don't want to live that back again. But any thoughts?
Now I'm excited for this. It's writing a book's very slow, I've learned. Now what I do every day, I go to the stadium today, I write a story, boom. It's live on MLB.com in 2 minutes. This has been a long process. This time last year, I had just signed the contract. I was starting on the book. This was the most fun I've ever had in my career covering baseball because my job, 150 nights a year out of 162 games, is asking, hey, Chris Bassett, why did your splitter suck today? Hey, Vladdy, why did you strike out? Hey, John Schneider, what went into that base running decision in the 7th inning? Yeah, it's interesting for a day. By the next morning, nobody cares. It's a vapor. It's thin air. This was really special for me to be able to get into some bigger stories and to be able to tell guys, tell me about the best years of your life. Tell me about winning a World Series. Tell me about winning an MVP. Tell me about hitting that walk-off home run. And the way I'm thinking of it now, as I see fan sentiment currently, this is more a book about why people have fallen in love with the organization and some of the moments and the people who have been involved in that. A lot of it for myself as well. I grew up a baseball fan and writing a chapter on Carlos Delgado, who was my guy growing up. I was always like, let me stay up until the bottom of the second to watch Delgado because they went down 1-2-3 in the top half. So there are stories about where the Blue Jays came from, their history, but I hope not in a boring way. I didn't want to write every single damn story in the history of the team because that would bore people. I was able to be a bit selective, profile a lot of the biggest names in franchise history, and then a lot of the stuff that I've been around for personally. I've kind of saved some stories for this, which has been a dangerous and risky game, but not just Ohtani and the full story of what happened there, but the COVID years and my experiences covering the team on the road and how crazy that was. And also a little bit about the broadcasters. There's a Buck Martinez chapter that I loved writing. There's a Dan Shulman chapter in there, Tom and Jerry. And like you see, Gibby wrote the foreword there. I finally locked him in for that. At first, he told me just to write what I wanted and put his name on it, make him sound smart. But I finally convinced Gibby to be a wordsmith there. But it's been a great joy, honestly, man. I'm excited for people to read it because I've been stuck reading it myself for a year. So somebody else's turn now. I can't wait.
Very excited for it. Again, the link will be in the description. Maybe in 5 years down the line, the Jays will win a World Series, and we'll have a volume 2 on all the stories in there. Let me put some positivity into it. But yeah, check it out. It's going to be a good book. I'm going to make sure to pre-order it, and you should too. It's in the description. But Keegan, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much for telling these both stories and helping Jays fans feel a little bit better about what's going to be a interesting. That's the word I've been using a lot. Intriguing. Upcoming season, trade deadline. Hopefully we can have you back again at some point soon. So thank you very much for joining me today.
We'll see where she goes. Thanks for having me, man.
See you later, guys.